capacity in trade policy research, trade policy analytics, because in today's world, globally, there are a lot of changes happening, geopolitical changes, and also economic realignments and so on happening. So, in this context, if a country like India has to grow rapidly, the kind of targets that we have for the at a macroeconomic level, we also have to grow our exports. We have to be very aggressive on our export strategy, trade policy strategy. And in the recent years, recent months, we have been doing a lot of work on trade agreements and export promotion activities and so on. So, in this regard, we have been conducting these programs with the view to promote more use of data and analytics and scientific methods to understand the various aspects of trade and to come up with policy actions. And this is necessary both for policymakers but also for industries, academics, think tanks across the country. So this is an effort we have been doing. Some of the webinars have been focused on methodology. Some of them are focused on certain issues. So today we are very happy to welcome Mr. Deepak Parikh. He's a great friend of mine and also colleague. We have, and he has a lot of experience working on a wide range of issues in agriculture intersecting with technology. So agri-tech is what I would say his broad area is, and he has been also a serial entrepreneur. He has founded many startups, and so currently he has come here representing agri, yeah. So and they are doing a lot of work on different types of analytics in agriculture, like prices, exports, imports, and so on. So let's listen to him about the strategies that we as a country should undertake to double the agricultural exports, basically cross the $100 billion mark in agricultural exports in the near future. And as I already talked enough about exports development, and we cannot ignore agriculture. Agriculture is a very important sector for us, particularly from a livelihood standpoint, from a rural India livelihood standpoint, and also the forward and backward linkages that also connect to the food processing industry and so on. So, in this context, we are very happy to have Mr. Parikh here. So, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot, Badri. I would really thank Niti Aayog to invite us and share our perspective, because you rightly said that agriculture is very important with Indian context. And you'll see in some of my slides that actually among the major economies in the world, India happens to be a country which is having still close to 17 to 18% of our GDP coming from agriculture. Secondly, we always say that India lives in its villages, right? And I believe this is a time to take our villages through our agriculture product to the world. And that is what we'll be talking about today, that how we can ensure that the overall export of agricultural product in India can touch close to $100 billion, not at the pace at which inflation will take it to $100 billion, but to ensure that we catalyze it and identify some very sweet spots which can be, I'll say that, taking the export in that specific sector by 10x, 12x, and maybe even in some of the commodities where we have our own capabilities to 100x. And believe me, this is possible, and this is possible for a very simple reason that we are doing a lot of right things. And at the same time, also, the tailwinds are supporting us. So I would request if we can start the presentation. So the idea here is that how do we double the agricultural exports? And AgriWatch has been working for more than 21 years trying to solve some of these puzzles of Indian agriculture sector. And me and under guidance of our chairman, Mr. Bhaskar, and our advisor, Saroja ma'am, who is having extensive experience in this industry, we have been able to identify some shoots where I believe that there is a possibility that India can touch $100 billion worth of export, agricultural export, over 3 to 7 years of horizon, depending on what we do right and how the market reacts to what we are doing. So let's yeah. So let's first of all see the elephant in the room. And believe me, you would have seen this many a time, right? The food security has been hit very badly because of pandemic. Just before pandemic, we were having close to 800 million people who were food insecure. And today we are having close to a billion people out of roughly 7.8 billion people who live on this mother earth who are food insecure. Now things are not going to become easier for a very simple reason. By 2050, we'll be adding 2 billion more people to this world. We are already seeing the impact of climate change. I was in Rajasthan, I was in Ethiopia, and I've seen that productivity has actually gone down depending on the crop you pick between 8 to 10%. And that would mean what? That would mean that with additional demand of 60% of food and 8 to 10% impact of climate change, we'll need double the land we are cultivating today. So, in a nutshell, the way the agriculture is done today is not sustainable. But at the same time, in the current global context, it gives a big opportunity to a country like India, which is having amongst the highest available arable land in the world. With beautiful 127 different agroclimatical zones, we can grow close to 400 different value chains, right, or the commodities of 400 value chains out of 700 available in the world. So we can grow anything, everything which a human being can eat. Now let's understand a little bit of global context. So if you see that we live in a world which need a fundamental change in the way the food systems are run. And it is on across, I'll say, that multiple facet of that food system itself. We are living in a world which have 2 billion people suffering from micronutrient deficiency, while 2 billion adults which are overweight. So our consumption patterns have to change. 800 million people in agriculture live below poverty line, and these are the people who produce 80% of food which we consume. Agri-food sector represents 30% of global greenhouse gas emission, directly and indirectly. Directly 25%, another 5% because of the transportation of agri products and food processing industry, use of nitrogen. So overall 30%, which is just next to the energy itself. But not too many people talk about GHG's impact because of agriculture. So agriculture is not just the victim of climate change, but it is also one of the culprit of climate change. Then we are talking about 70% of freshwater withdrawals is all because of agriculture. At the same time, 500 million smallholder farmers worldwide produce over 80% of the food consumed by the developing world. So they are very important for our food security. Now, while you see that the commodities has been actually since 1990s on upward trend, but you used to have periodical reliefs as well. Whenever there is a global crisis, you will find that the commodity would be touching high, right? Then again stabilizing, and then again touching some other high. So if you see 2007, 2008, when there was subprime crisis, then 2011, 12. But currently what we are seeing has never happened in the past, right? We are at the highest level of the typically the global food commodity inflation. Now, in short due time also, if you see typically once the market started opening up after the lockdowns which was put across the world, typically from April onwards, you see upward trends starting with few commodities, and currently each and every commodity is at historical high. Now that is creating further challenges when it comes to food security. Now if you see how typically the global business of agriculture, forestry and fishing happens, right? So this is from the World Bank Group, the data.
Just a quick question. When you say historical high, you mean historical high in current prices or some kind of constant prices?
Current prices. Current prices. And Food and Agriculture Organization also, they have their own index to track it, right? And I think they take 14, 16 as a basis as 100. Mm-hmm. And they found it it is extremely high. And even if you see that just yesterday they've released further predictions and they still see that this is going to continue for some time. 44 countries are actually become food insecure already because of the very high prices. A substantial number of them from Africa, Latin America, And that I also see that is an opportunity for a country like India, where these countries, first thing is humanitarian, and second is business as well. So both things are taken care of. And in going forward, a country like India, which is aspiring to become the football of the world, we need to look at these countries as an opportunity as well. Well, definitely Europe and North America is an opportunity, but these countries also would be playing a substantial role when it comes to our basket of export. Now, if you see that India and China, right, they are producing the maximum for a very simple reason: we consume a lot. So you'll find that the similar situation, both China and India, we produce a lot, but our exports are actually not that high. While you see the country like America, where actually they're having 220 billion dollars as their gross value addition, but still they are exporting substantially far more than us. Another beauty there is that actually while they export pure commodities of roughly 100 odd billion dollars, but when it comes to food and agriculture, suddenly it goes to more than $1 trillion, right? So six to seven times of value addition of the raw material. This is what we have to learn from, whether it is US, whether it is Netherlands, whether it is Germany, whether it is France or Israel. Israel is a very small country, but I've mentioned here is because again, in their case also, the value addition by which they are able to just export maybe a couple of billion dollars worth of food. But when you see the value addition, they've been able to do it, right? It is at the range of 7 times, 8 times, 9 times. And we also as a country, we have to learn it that in old times when you were just selling the ore, right, you were not making money. But when you started making steel, you started making more money. Now that thing has to be there in agriculture as well, that we cannot just export commodities as it is. We'll have to find ways and means how we can add more value and hence increase or I'll say that enhance our export potential. Now, if we see that, when we talk about this percentage of GDP, and agriculture, forestry, and fishing is typically definition by on international standards, in which actually they consider anything which happens on the farm, hunting, and anything which happens in when you fish, right? Go and catch fishes, shrimps, and all that. So all of that is part of when we say that agriculture, forestry, and fishing, and it is definition by the typically World Bank Group itself. So you'll find that out of all these roughly 14, 15 odd countries which are among the top producers and exporters of agriculture produce, only India happens to be having the percentage of GDP agriculture coming from agriculture of more than 15%. So typically you're talking about depending on from starting from 2012 onwards, we have been in range of 15 to 18%. In COVID, actually, again, this increased further because that was the only activity which was working. But again, you'll find that we'll be roughly close to 17%. Now, this can be a big boon as well as it can be a great pain also if we are not able to handle the situation correctly. Similarly, you'll find that China is roughly we are looking at around 9%. So you'll find that only India is having that potential that still we are heavily invested in the concept of agriculture. So that makes it very important for us to look at agriculture as an opportunity, as not something which is dragging us down, right? So there is always a lot of thought which say that let's move a lot of farmers out of agriculture and let's put them in service industry or in manufacturing. I have personal opinion that India can definitely become football of the world, and agriculture itself is capable of us taking to roughly $2 to $3 trillion if we also add the climate part of it. Because the way the ETFs are going in the world, you'll find that there is only one activity which not just only reduces the emission, but can put carbon back to the soil. So it's very important we also see how we can create revenue channels for our farmers through climate exchanges, and government and Niti Aayog should think about it, how we galvanize it and then catalyze it so that we have our own exchanges for carbon trading. So here also you will see that except Brazil, majority of when we have the percentage of agriculture trade as overall trade, that is overall trade of a country, Brazil is this year it is 45. Previously it was for past 2 years 18, 19 around 40%. India is again you can see that we are roughly around 2.5 to 3%, and US would be around 10 to 12%. So you'll find that while we produce a lot, right, when it comes to agriculture trade versus, sorry, it's 10% for India, agriculture versus overall trade, we are still I think we should be aspired to be closer to Brazil. than to be like, closer to say France or Russia.
So for Brazil, the share in GVA is very low. GDP share is
Very low.
less than 10%, but this is 40%.
Yes, so their export predominantly, right, is agrarian.
They're exporting.
Right? They do soya, they do sugar, they
cotton.
do not cotton much, but ethanol, and even also like in the meat industry also, animal husbandry.
Yeah, meat is.
So their export and actually the next door neighbor, like the North America, consume a lot of produce from them. So now coming to like typically in the number terms, if you see again like US has been the giant, right? They export roughly 180 million or billion worth of uh, agricultural produce, and then you'll find that like we India is roughly we hover around 30, 35, 40, right? This year we went above 50. That's a good news for all of us. We'll also talk about what is the reason for that. So you'll find that like these are some of the countries, and except China and India, you'll find that they are not huge producers, but still they export a lot. And again, the common thread here is that value addition. Netherlands is one exception because they just don't only export commodities and produces out of commodities, but also a lot of technology.
But here, what you see is these are all primary agricultural exports. So we are not yet here. We are not talking about value addition.
We are not talking about.
So even in terms of primary exports, the US is leading.
Yes.
So in a sense, the production is more export oriented.
100%. 100%. Or they have like ensure that like they get more value for every grain they export. And Netherlands actually like you'll find that again they are other than just primary exports, they have also been like doing a lot of export of technology. So India also, when we say that we are a tech hub of the world, right, you'll find the maximum number of tech startups are from India. So there is a huge potential as for also like export agriculture technology globally, and that itself can also be a part of the overall agricultural exports.
You want to say that this Netherlands export technology portion is also included in that?
No, it is not included. But I'm saying that there is a possibility because Netherlands export worth roughly $9 to $10 billion worth of technology as well, with like agriculture related. Yes, agriculture related. Whether it is like to reduce the water using of IoTs, the greenhouses, hydroponics, aeroponics. So they do a lot of those activities because few years back, Netherlands started understanding that actually we use all these our technologies which we were trying to control within our own land. We are not having sufficient land to actually realize the potential of those technology. So they started like doing also that global outreach where they were talking to those who were having land to like can we participate it in revenue sharing basis. They exported to private players also as the technology itself. And you'll find that there is a place which is in Rajasthan called Basi, which is called Mini Israel. And 60 to 70% of technology there, though it is called Mini Israel, is from Netherlands. So that's the value they are bringing on table, where they said actually, if we understand the technology, why not also make it a very strong export potential for the nation? And now coming back to India, we are having far more tech startups than Netherlands, right? And there is a huge potential that maybe our private sector in Netherlands, it is like a lot funded by the government because they had this initiative like after the Second World War when they had to starve. So their focus on agriculture was there that will become actually like 100% Atmanirbhar, right? And then they actually like were able, because the land was a problem. They were having salinity and they had to take land away from the sea. So with all those challenges, they become net positive and then started exporting also, whether it is flowers, foods, vegetable, and this is, and especially tomatoes, right? All of us eat actually tomatoes, which would be coming from some lab in Netherlands eventually, right? Because of the hybrid seeds they created. So this is what Netherlands was able to do, and I believe this is a time we can also promote our startups to be more oriented towards global markets. India has its own challenges, and then we always say that 130 million farmers, let's solve their problem. But some of the technology which we have created can also have international use, and we should promote that as well. Now, if you see that from agriculture, the food, definitely like, this is just the food export where you are not having the cottons and all those part of it, which is not consumed. There again, you'll find that the leadership is with Netherlands and US. Now, this is the share in the global agriculture trade. So again, you'll find that the lion's share is of US, 10%, around 6% is Netherlands, and then you have Brazil, Germany around close to 5%, then China, and then India and Russia, right? So this is where actually when we say that a country like India, right, with such a beautiful land, so many farmers, if we are still at 2%, right, of total global agricultural trade, right, there is a humongous potential which is untapped. Now let's talk a little bit of state of Indian agriculture. Now this is what I was saying, that if you see, our exports generally increase when the FAO's food price index also increase. So one of the very strong reason why we have reached or crossed $50 billion is that actually global high prices. So this trend actually need to be changed, where actually even if the high price regime doesn't exist, still we keep on increasing our exports.
Here, I think there are two explanations. One is because the prices are increasing, our exports value increase because of that inflation. Secondly, because the prices are increasing, we are getting an opportunity.
100%.
If we are
Production is typically higher than a lot of countries. So unless the prices go up, there is no parity for our products a lot of times.
Right.
So when the prices go up,
so you're saying the second
profit. So
second explanation is not that strong. You're saying the price increases are not creating opportunities for us.
They are creating opportunities. We're giving us that gap which we need. The margins that we need.
See, just for example, the wheat is a big opportunity currently, like, and very happy that government is trying to tap it, right? That opportunity has come because of the prices of the wheat being very high. Now, when things again become normal, right, then the roughly 4,000 rupees per quintal types of prices, right, won't be there.
Of course, we are making money there. We have our margins.
Now, currently 4,000 we have the margins, 100% we are having the margins. But when it comes back, like, to 1600, 1800, 1900, right, then suddenly, like, we become not economically viable as an export destination, right?
But another reason I think to consider when it comes to parity is that the developed countries typically they have strong subsidies. Right? The domestic support is very high. Like you said, it was more for self-sufficiency. But like your numbers say, they are exporting disproportionately more than their production. So that also has to be
100.
We cannot do much about it other than we are talking in WTO about
it. In general, cost of production is lower than us. We need to
even after subsidies.
Even before subsidies.
Because basically, sir, our agriculture input cost is very high in India. And that is the key reason for this.
Yields are about half there.
Correct.
So we have a double whammy there.
Yeah. Yield is one of the biggest challenge, and we're actually like we are in majority of the crops we are not even close to the world average. Forget about some of the developed economies. In fruits and vegetable we have done far better, right? And like 50% increase over past 10 odd years we have been able to achieve. But when you see grains and pulses, oil seeds, still like lot can be done. But I believe that is a very gradual process, right? Because it has taken us to increase yield by 30% more than 20 years. So I don't see that happening like next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, where we suddenly double. While I'll say that appreciate one of very recent initiative where the government allowed the CRISPR technology, where actually genetically edited seeds, if there is no foreign gene in it or moderation in it, is now allowed and not considered to be GMO. Now, those type of, I'll say that excellent initiative, I see would increase our yield substantially because everything is in a seed. The rest of the thing is secondary. If you don't grow your crop with good seed, then you have already lost the half battle. So by opening up that and making it so simple, right, I believe that was a great gesture by the government, and only 17, 18 odd countries have like, as allowed genetically edited. Again, GMO and genetically edited, while we can consider it to be modified, but are very different technology, the CRISPR technology. So that is, I'm saying, welcome changes, and it's good that actually we are going on that direction. But again, the yield increase in some of the predominant crops which we are going today is going to take some time. So that's why we have tried to identify some alternatives where how in 3 to 5 or 7 years we are able to double our export. Now here again, it is correlated to the previous slide. For India, high prices are not always good sign. right? For example, this year when our exports increase, the cost of import also increased substantially because a lot of commodities we import, especially for example, veg oil and all that, where 80% is imported. And that's why you see that the trade surplus has dipped because the impact on import was far more dominant than the impact on the export itself. And we have to keep this chart always in mind whenever we are trying to, I believe, make any policy, or whether it is about to go and have sell or like look forward to sell more commodities international market. We have to be very careful that if we have to import, right, at the high prices, it could be a very challenging task because then you'll have a huge impact on your trade surplus, especially related to agriculture. No, AgriWatch is pioneer in creating this something which we call the balance sheets. So all the commodity we track, I'll say, to the depth on the production side, consumption side, then the trade side, as well as stock to use ratio. And this chart will give you actually what should be the policy direction we should be taking. So if you see in pulses, our generally productions and consumption are like pretty flat. But if you see on the international trade side, right, we are generally importing far more than we export. And there is a lot of variations in that. Now, how do we ensure that even international trade, it also is more predictable straight line? That is very important. And we'll suggest what can be done for that. Similarly, stock to use ratio, you'll find that in some of the commodities, right, when you breach the 20% and go below that, it can create a challenge for you because if something wrong happen, maybe like, there is a flood in that area where it is being grown, or there is a rot, or if there is some natural calamity happening there, then you are stuck with scenario where you have to import at very high prices. So the stock to use ratio, I believe, like is very important, and then the delta for your export minus import, and we vigorously track it.
So when you say trade here, you mean imports, right?
Export minus imports.
Oh, okay.
So that's the delta.
That's
Yes.
deficit.
Yes. It is deficit when actually you are importing more than in purchase. Yes.
So in 2018-19, this is Chana. Right?
Yes, Chana. Another thing here is that actually pulses also there is a new trend where we talk about alternative proteins, right? Especially the plant-based meat, and it is growing like at pace of like 70 to 80% CAGR, and that needs typically like your peas, moong, masoor, right? And there is another opportunity which we can unlock, right? If we can divert a good number of our farmers, right, to those type of product, they are high value product, give more value to the farmers, more value to the ecosystem. So that can also be thought about how we can incentivize farmer to be going these, and even environmentally that is a better crop.
Less water intensive.
Yes. So the next when we go like it is the grains, right? Grains, we are in good situation currently because of wheat. We are looking to export 11, 12 million metric ton, if I'm not wrong. That is what we aspire to from 6 million metric ton last year, roughly 7 million. So again, wheat is great. Rice also, if you see like the non-basmati rice has been growing pretty decently, right? If you see last year, this year, again, there is a decent increase in export. But again, we have to be very careful here when we go and see the stock to use ratio, right? When we start going below 20%, then that's a red flag. And especially for commodity like wheat and rice, which is staple for India, right? Over aggressive export could be something which we need to be careful about. It is an opportunity, but we have to be careful about it. That's
For ecosystem.
especially rice. Yes, like 5,000 to 8,000 liters of water per kg of rice. In a way, what we are trying to do is you are exporting your water, right? Yeah, which like is a very limited commodity. And same is with like when we see like we'll talk a little bit about sugar and cotton also. Those are also crop which are extremely water intensive and very negative to the environment. So we have to again recalibrate ourselves that actually should we give subsidy to export sugar or not, right?
So point, there is one argument that could be made, that is India is a very diverse country. in some parts like southern and maybe to some extent western parts, there is a lack of water resources. But central northern India, UP, the Ganga, and so on, there we have excess water. Like in Bihar, many times there are floods and so on.
Right.
So probably there could be different crops that can be cultivated in different parts.
I think this is actually, we would encourage government to think about doing a national level survey, right, of demand and supply. Now that is missing for decades. If you ask me as a practitioner in this field, right, do we have a very clear, well-defined data about what is being grown where and what is the demand around it, right? I doubt for majority of the crops it is available, right? And this is very important exercise. Then only you will be able to calibrate based on your agroclimatical zone and the demand and supply, and then say that hey, you should not be growing cotton in Rajasthan, right? So those type of things are only possible, right, if we have national level, right, deep rooted. I'm saying that maybe one time exercise and repeat it after 5 years, 6 years, or 7 years, where we have a very clear visibility of what's happening on the ground at the grassroots level. And I would recommend that it should not be done by those agencies which have to promote some of the schemes, because then it is conflict of interest. Somebody has been asked to increase the total sowing area of urad, and then you say that actually he will say that no, urad area has fallen down, right? That's not going to happen, right? So we have to, I'll say that there has to be, the information collection has to be a different activity, and then the activity to push the government policies and programs on ground has to be, I'll say that, total separate activities. So same way oilseed, you see that we are not exporting or importing, importing at least the rapeseed, that is mustard. So in here you'll find that the international trade is only in groundnut, which we export a lot, and soybean, which we keep on either importing or exporting depending on the scenario. And here also you see that the current challenge is stock to use ratio being very low.
And there is some scope for soybean, it seems. So we have some capacity.
And especially again, I'll say that we need to, because we got into some engagement with Australia, right? We got into some engagement with the US. I believe we need to get those technologies down here, which can give us soybean, which are better than what type of soybean varieties we are going here, because I think it is 16 or 17% oil. 17% is oil what we are able to extract. So generally soybean most of the time would be used for only cattle feed, right? Not as a viable oil extraction.
Basically, we are crushing soybean in India for meal only. We used to get 80% of meal and 17-18% of oil. The rest 1-2% is.
Yeah. So again, I believe there is a huge opportunity potential, but again, it needs effort on agronomy side, need effort on influencing farmer, helping them to ensure they grow the right sort of variety with right support. I think government has already allowed GMO in import, GMO import, right? So that is again where actually if GMO is imported, why GMO cannot be grown. Those things I am saying that definitely it's a debatable and a little bit of controversial area. I don't want to cover here, but I think we need to have a better rethink on all those areas.
And this import will cause the local farmers to suffer a bit. So that's going to have a snowball effect of some sort. Let's see how it plays out.
Spices we are doing pretty well, especially when it comes to chili, pepper, turmeric, cumin. We are doing very well there. Cardamom and all that, we are having ups and downs. But overall, I say that spices is one sector which is, unfortunately, past 2 years they have not been very high increase in export. In fact, a little bit dip is there. But overall, otherwise, this is also an area which India can focus a little bit more to promote it. And there the price parity is very important. We are competing with Indonesia and the Vietnams of the world, where their cost is little bit lower. So we have to find ways and means that actually how we can reduce the cost of cultivation for some of the farmers. And these are a little bit risky crop also. So risk mitigation tools are also need to be created for those farmers, so that for example, we had a very I'll say that volatile chili season past 2 years, right, in Guntur, right, because of pest infestation and the untimely rain and all that. So there we have to ensure, because these are high cost crops which needs a lot of activity on ground, how to ensure that we are able to mitigate the risk, then we'll see that this can also become a very strong export potential for India. It is already is.
These are better quality, so we do command better prices. But if we become too high, then the customer switches to the cheaper variety, which is where the Vietnams and Indonesia and Sri Lanka used to get it.
Right.
So that's something that how to leverage our brand is something that we need to figure there.
Right.
That's not expensive.
So sugar, less at the better, right?
Spice boards as well.
Yes, there is spice board. They are.
And when you say sugar, you are talking about sugar cane, right? Here you are talking about sugar cane.
No, here we are talking about it's a balance sheet of sugar. So again, there is a huge export potential because not too many countries want to grow sugar or produce sugar, right? So that's open up opportunities for us, but at what cost, right? And that I'm saying environmental factor has to be always considered when we're talking about sugar. I don't want to comment much on that, but we should be careful.
Also big on sugar.
Brazil, yes.
And also the geographical, this USD closer, moving
Right.
Maybe we can cover other slides faster.
Yeah, sure. I'll just move. So same way, cotton, currently good prices, more potential. And here again, organic cotton, if we are able to have certification, all that taken care of, it would be great. It could be a great opportunity for us. Now going forward, three themes. I'll move very fast on that. So fruit and vegetable. I strongly believe that this is an opportunity for us because 127 agroclimatical zone which we have, we can cultivate everything and anything. Even if you see that, we are second largest producer of horticulture in the world, just after China. The production, we are at roughly 11.2%, right, of the total world production. Here I'll come to the point where actually we are typically roughly exporting out of $1.3 trillion, right? Just around $1.4 billion, right? Just a 1%. A country which is 11 to 12% of the production of the world, right, is just contributing 1% of the world trade or export.
massive consumption.
Yes, no, not massive consumption. There are losses because of not availability. I'll talk about some of the challenges. So there are various factors, and we don't believe in value addition. We only believe in selling it as it is, right? Pack it, send it, right? We are not doing any value addition, unlike what Thailand is doing.
Frozen, very little happens.
Yeah.
When it comes to FNB.
Right. But if you see if we do a proper macro and microeconomic analysis, we can easily reach to 12x without further increasing the catchment area. If we give just right value addition, reduce the losses, reduce the sell on the suboptimal level, we have already have possibility of going to $19.04 billion from current $1.4 odd billion. Now, key challenge is lack of post-harvest infrastructure close to production area. This is a big challenge. We always believe in food parks, but these type of solution crops need closer to the village, closer to the taluka, right? Then lack of coherent marketing at international level to promote FNV and FNV products from India. Lack of implementation of good agriculture and good manufacturing practices. Still, farmer doesn't know that he should not spray 15 days before harvest. Still, he does it, right? So then actually we have residues, and then we have problem when we export these products. Lack of structured data on demand and supply to balance production and processing. Same thing which I was saying that I think Nitya should ask, you should commission us to do this survey for you. Low private sector participation in processing and new product development, lack of application of modern technology like traceability. Now, this is very critical. Now, recommendation, incentivize setting up processing facilities closer to production site, better regulation, compliance and certification process to enhance trust, especially low residue and organic produce. Promote private investment in new product innovation and processing, especially in a decentralized manner rather than centralized food parks and research centers. Periodic national demand and supply survey to identify the gaps in the trade, hence data-driven policy. Lucrative financing of export-oriented units involving FNV processing. Export-oriented unit, they get some subsidy, but the financing is a big challenge. If I'm having sitting a container of banana, nobody wants to insure it, nobody wants to fund it, right? So that's a great challenge that needs to be solved. Supporting global marketing of FNV product originating from India.
So one thing we always, whenever we talk about agricultural exports, one challenge we face is the SPS, right? Standards from the other countries. So on this, I think some of your recommendations are useful, like coming up with certifications and so on. That's something discussed a lot about. And like you said, traceability is also important there. But one thing is okay, why we are talking about exports, we have to do that. Why not think about domestic standards? And also, do we have what about our import standards? When we import fruits and vegetables in some of the agricultural communities, do we have standards, similar standards that other countries impose on us?
No,
We don't.
we don't. Secondly, when you say that, why not domestic? I would love to have a certified food. The challenge is that pricing, right? Export gives you that opportunity of having a little bit more delta, right? Because okra, which is sold for maybe 18, 19, 20 rupees here, is sold for 9 dirham, 10 dirham in UAE, right? So that the part of traceability could be like,
calling it natural, organic, and all that.
anybody says whatever they feel like, low residue, natural, right, grown in best possible manner, organic also, like, now they have been a little bit of like, restrictive about it. But even Indian organic certification, it needs a lot of to look into it, how it is being governed, executed and delivered.
There is a question of double standards, especially from EU. But I think the way to handle it is to make it more stringent locally.
Yeah.
So that there's that margin where they don't get to.
That's what I was thinking.
There's definitely double standards. But we have to play with whatever rules exist.
So time and again, sometimes it is for mangoes, then for the grapes or something. So how do we do that? Because
But NAFTA does certification for the exports side.
They do.
So that's why I always think that maybe we need to be more stringent for exports than just matching what they do, because they say your gauges were not right. Our, our B test is the best way, and they may change the test, and we may not have got to that test and stuff like that. So, but in terms of pomegranates, apples, and grapes, I think Apida has done a wonderful job. 99% it doesn't return. But it's the
SPS standard get changed in any of the country, they have to notify to WTO. So that way there is some we already know it's what's happening there on SPS side. So notifications are required.
Here, actually, I was also mentioning about, for example, like organic certification. One is for export potential, and one is that actually a product being organic certified, and it lands, a mango lands in UK, and there is a pesticide residue in that, which is being branded as a organic, certified as a organic. Then it creates a trust deficit that actually now, if it is coming from India,
things need to be
there
has to be some protocols to be.
Exactly. Sometimes it is not intentional, sometimes it is like malafide both. So we have to ensure that the technology can play a very vital role here, right, to sort these problems. Now, next is a crop I myself love a lot. I believe it is not justified that we are still just doing scratching the surface. There's hardly $28.5 million worth of export. Luckily, guided by the Prime Minister in 2018, actually we sponsored a motion in FAO Council to make 2023 as a year of millet. And that is the best thing which could happen, because we are having 33.3% of global production. Right, that's huge. However, still the millet is used, jowar is used to feed cattle, right? The beauty of millet is that actually it is a crop which is climate resilient and sustainable both. Needs hardly any water, right? Not putting too much of fertilizer and pesticide. And this could be something which could be a game changer in India, because now there is a trend of what we call it superfoods, right? Now, superfood market is like, quinoa and all that coming from Latin America and all that, sold for just like if it is as good as gold, right? When I compare it with our bajra and pearl millet and all that, I found it's not much of difference, right, in their nutritional density. And this is where the $214.95 billion worth of market can be tapped by us, right? Again, there are challenges. The challenge is that lack of incentive to grow millets, right? Farmer is having hardly any incentive, right? Except MSP, and on that also the procurement doesn't happen. So he sees it as a very big risk. If it is not exported, then actually there is nobody to buy it. Lack of awareness, market linkages, and marketing for millets. So if I do bajra, I'm not very sure actually where I'll be able to go and sell it. Lack of consumer acceptance. due to higher cost of processed millet. So generally people don't eat bajra, but they would like to have, like, for example, cookies made up of one millet. Now, just having, like, few tons of cookies made, it's big cost. Well, I have a wheat-based cookies, which would be in like multiple million metric tons. So the economy of scales are not there. So we have to find some ways where actually, like, we are able to support getting, like, economy of scale in this market, and lack of research and development on both agronomy side as well as the product side, leading to high cost of new product development. Nobody has done, like, extensive research on how to increase the yields of bajra, right? We have done so much on wheat. We have done so much on typically, like, green revolution crops. But again, the millets is ignored. Now, recommendation: incentivize research in area of plant breeding and agronomy to increase yield, support for new product development to enable more popular adoption and export-centric products, aggressive promotion of millets for domestic consumption on lines of milk and egg promotion programs of the past, lucrative financing of export-oriented units involved in millet processing, supporting global marketing of millets and millet-based produce originating from India. And I think we are planning to do a big, huge activities, in fact, in 2023, right, going to 8 or 9 different centers and promoting Indian millets. I believe, like, 2023, we should do far more than what we are currently doing, and we can. This can become, like, a goal for a country like India.
We are millet snacks.
I know. Everybody should eat as much as millet possible.
ITC and the maize research, somebody in Hyderabad.
Indian Institute of Millet Research, IMR.
They together did a lot of work on biscuits and this.
No, ma'am, I was part of that engagement. Like, ICRI set was there, Indian Institute of Millet was there, and in fact we also have big millet event also. And I believe, like, this can be something which India.
But it's just not been fast enough.
Yeah. But 2023 will galvanize, because now it's our year, right? We got it from the FAO, and we have to support it. The next area of, like, where we can talk about 10x types of possible in next 3 to 5 years is that medicinal and aromatic plant. If you see, like, the medicinal plants, herbs and herb product is roughly 120 billion global market and growing at CAGR of 14.88%. It is the fastest growing segment in agriculture. And this is going to become a 7 trillion economy by 2050. Now, there are only 2 streams of medicine which works. Traditional medicine is trusted globally. One is the Chinese and one is Indian, right? The Ayurveda, Unani and all that. And then you're having Chinese medicine. Chinese are exporting 13 times of what we are exporting.
Plant-based, animal-based, traditional medicines.
So they have a lot of plant-based also. They have a lot of herbs. Right. Ginseng, yeah. So yes, they are. Then there are also tiger bones also, right? But the size of that, like, their market is 12-13 times of ours, and at the same time we are exporting roughly 1.13 billion worth of medicinal plant, herbs and herb products, and the domestic market is roughly $3 billion. Now, the WHO says that 80% of the world population relies on plant-based medical treatment, for which raw material is obtained from 20,000 plant species. And India, right, we have 6,500 of them. We are only working on 178 such species, which are having market of more than 100 metric ton, right? While we trade 1,000 species, ashwagandha, brahmi, ugul, these have actually, like, have shown that during COVID, definitely they have a positive impact. So we see that in case we are able to work on these specific products, then there is a possibility of, like, in next 3 to 5 years, increasing this export to 10x. And the challenge, lack of research and
Science is doing a lot of, but there's no big traction.
Yeah.
Like I was checking up with the Kerala government side also. Do they really want to push these products? Ayurvedic and medical. They have also limited traction.
Yeah, sir, वहाँ पे थोड़ा challenge है actually. Even in fact, there was WHO's DG was here, so I was also invited to speak there in Ahmedabad, Gandhinagar.
Jharkhand and some of these states, they are more interested.
Sir, the challenge is that we are still having mindset of collecting, not growing. We see बूटी ढूंढ के लाएगा जंगल के अंदर, right? बूटी उगाएगा क्यों नहीं? Right? So collection is always a difficult task, right? And you'll see that in last 3 years, right, our net volume has decreased, but the value has increased. So international demand is there. Even before COVID, the demand was, and COVID has actually acted as a catalyst, right? But at the same time, we still are having this mindset of okay, that this is an activity of collection rather than of cultivation. That's why out of 6,500, we are having like only 170 odd, which is having more than 100 metric tons of trade happening. This is where I believe, some of the recommendations which you're talking about need to be taken care of. For example,
Work in this area somewhere.
yes, sir. Actually, in fact, the medicinal plant, long back, we have done some
We work with the board, the national
medicinal plant board.
in terms of, tracking prices and availability in different parts, and just maintain the website. But the point really is actually saying that we're not able to grow more to, meet the demand. So that's something.
Many of these are in the forest areas, so they are governed by the forest regulations.
Right.
And activity growing and all that.
No, but
So, sir, ashwagandha, for example, you can grow anywhere. Nobody stops you.
Some of them might be.
And tissue culture, I mean, बहुत much you can grow in a room like this. But we don't know how much of it has happened and how much hasn't happened.
So just I can say that biodiversity act of MOEFCC comes into play a lot with these traditional
That's why
medicines.
I'm saying that, the lack of research and development, we are not aware where we've reached in terms of tissue culture.
These activities will be
Sure, we
even
can look.
trying to push this idea to Kerala side too, because they have a very good ecosystem for Ayurveda and
Yes.
many tourists and all that. They also that. So there's a good scope for backward linkages also and to popularize the same medicines in the international, because Chinese side is the diaspora that pulls the the medicines there, all that is a big factor.
Right.
And if similarly Indian diaspora, they also get little more interested in our plant-based Ayurveda and all that, that would be a giving a pulling factor. That's what we understood through the whole delegations discussions.
So in US, you can now get turmeric latte. So there is, in fact, there are a lot of Indian product of ashwagandha, right? You have typically
But turmeric का तो जो उसका जो ingredient है उसी के भी capsules आते हैं. What is that?
curcumin content, sir. So this is where I was saying, sir, the lack of standardization of product and formulation, right? And then lack of implementation of good agriculture and collection practices.
ये सब कैसे मतलब so far little bit I understand. इसमें काफी आयुष मंत्रालय के बाद काफी मतलब काम हुआ, लेकिन फिर भी वो ग्राउंड से कनेक्ट और काइंड ऑफ इकोसिस्टम बोलते हैं या क्या बोले उसको, तो या हमारे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स भी उतने इंटरेस्टेड नहीं है एक्सेप्ट वेरी फ्यू. तो हम लोग यहाँ पे प्लान स्कीम्स तो आएगा, लेकिन उसका ग्राउंड पे जो है उसको कमर्शियल शेप देने के लिए वो कहाँ लोग हैं. अल्टीमेटली तो जो है कुछ प्रोसेसिंग होगा, कुछ कलेक्शन होगा, कुछ ट्रेड होगा.
सबसे ब्यूटी यहाँ पे ये है कि इसका प्रोसेसिंग बहुत सिंपल है.
ये सब चीज सिंपल है फिर,
हाँ.
लेकिन ट्रैक्शन
Sir, traction is नहीं because we are not able to aggregate demand and supply, right? अब मार्केट लिंकेजेस नहीं है. फॉर एग्जांपल आई गोइंग अश्वगंधा, अब मेरे को उसको बेचना है तो दैट बिकम्स अ नाइटमेयर बिकॉज नाउ मेरे को कैप्सूल बनाना पड़ेगा. अब मैं कैप्सूल बनाता हूँ, फिर मेरे को अमेजन में जाकर बेच सकता हूँ सिर्फ.
इसमें क्या है, ये हमारी बहुत सारी चीजों में यही सेम चीज आ जाती है, बिकॉज गवर्नमेंट फिर मार्केट साइड में तो इंटरवीन नहीं कर सकती है. सपोज की ये कुछ अनेबलिंग कर दिया कि एट बेस्ट क्या करते हैं कि इफ यू हैव डूइंग अल्टरनेटिव क्रॉप in place of this you are doing this, then for acre something, some kind of subsidy will be available to just to switch to that kind of cropping. But thereafter the business case has to be by the local entrepreneurs or the existing business houses. So if they take enough interest, things happen. If they don't take that kind of interest, things don't happen.
True.
उसके बाद में this is for the domestic market. International market, they have own their taste preferences and understanding of those products. Link up on sustainable basis to the international clientele is a very different kind of we also don't understand fully how do the other companies promote their products, because all these years some lifestyle and health is many platforms the way the businesses operate.
So I totally agree, but I was just talking about how to galvanize it. Nutraceutical is becoming a big deal nowadays, right? I believe all of us sitting in this room, we would have 5 years back would not known about what is nutraceutical all about, or maybe we have just read somewhere. Today, we see that happening. Like every shop you'll go, medical shop, you'll find some nutraceutical. So I believe the market is taking its own pace of doing that. How can we catalyze it? For example, if I want to buy ashwagandha, right? Is there a body which certify it? Even I don't know about it, right? For example, when there was a time when we promoted eggs like anything, right? हर एक बच्चे को मालूम पड़ गया था egg पीना अमूल बोलता दूध पीता है इंडिया right so we made it a mission and then we saw that actually what impact it had. This is also I believe there is a possibility if the government can act as a catalyst. I'm not just saying that giving subsidy.
Government, I have been sitting in this building for last many years, 20 years. इसमें क्या है बड़ा फोकस तरीके से जो प्रोग्रामेशन बोर्ड में कुछ हुए हैं जैसे कॉटन का भी प्रोडक्टिविटी का था कंटेमिनेशन रिड्यूस करना प्रोडक्टिविटी भी गॉट सम नोटिस सिमिलरली ये सारे एरियाज में जो बड़े मतलब लिंकेजेस एस्टेब्लिश करना उसको सस्टेन करना और दैट इज द थिंग इसमें चाहे आपका स्पाइसेस का एरिया हो चाहे आपका जो है ये मेडिकल वाला है इसमें या मिलेट्स का ऐसे गवर्नमेंट ऑफ एमपी दे आर कमिंग अप विद देयर मिलेट प्रोग्राम एंड ऑल दैट try to just link up what they are thinking if there is some program of the government there's some good base is there some understanding is there some intervention is there लेकिन उसके बाद next leg में कौन गवर्नमेंट तो नहीं करेगी गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स तो जाके उसको मिलेट को प्रोसेस करके मार्केट उसके बाद में जो दूसरे जो है ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस लाइक यू आप इनोवेशन को भी कोई सेगमेंट अगर कोई 100 मीट्रिक टन का मार्केट है अगर आप इनिशियली 2-3 मीट्रिक टन का भी जो है कैप्चर कर देते हैं उसके बाद तो इजी हो जाता है दैट इज यू नो कि व्हाट आर द क्रिटिकल फैक्टर्स तो ये सारे ही में काइंड ऑफ एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप आई थिंक रिक्वायर्ड फॉर वेरी निश एरियाज उसमें गवर्नमेंट का रोल तो वही जो सर्टिफिकेशन वाला है जैसे FSSAI ने बहुत सारा जो है specified किया है they go for lot many labeling requirement और whatever तो वहाँ पर रोल है कि कैसे सर्टिफिकेशन को प्रमोट किया जा सकता है जो चीज मार्केट के लिए हर्डल है जिससे कि people are not getting enough confidence to switch exactly potency level क्या है कैसे किया जाए तो our role is more towards laying a broad framework and setting up certain agencies who can bring the some kind of discipline in the across the board type.
100%, बिल्कुल, totally agree with you.
इसके बाद में तो सब जो है रोल आप लोगों का याद है कि इसीलिए
investors need इसके लिए investment चाहिए so some private investors have to come and it becomes like a commercial thing.
So sir, here we say incentivize technology adoption in map sector.
मिनट्स में हम लोग मतलब काफी जो भी किया है लेकिन उसके बाद उसको जो क्रिटिकल गैप्स है मान लीजिएगा कि आप कह रहे हैं कि इसके you have to go for the right products तो आप उसी में वर्क कर रहे हैं
True.
तो उसमें जैसे मतलब you have to locate the gaps अगर कहीं बहुत ही gaps हैं जो कि गवर्नमेंट इंटरवेंशन की जरूरत है then it is required लेकिन जो मार्केट कोई गैप्स फिल करने हैं इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है प्रोडक्ट करना है या मार्केट करना है तो वहाँ तो सिर्फ इन लोग मतलब इंक्यूबेटर्स तक का रोल रहा है गवर्नमेंट का मुझे जो भी इंक्यूबेटर इज ए बिग स्टेप यू कैन new businesses can do some experimentation over there test market little bit.
So I'll talk about it because sir, we ourselves we are having India's biggest EdTech incubator called Indigram Labs Foundation. So I'm on the board of directors of that, and it is part of AgriWatch is the same team. So we have incubated.
I know Kamal Khurana is working.
He's in ISAP. He's in ISAP. Yeah, Khurana is like he's in ISAP. So uska subsidiary has Indigram Lab Foundation. So we have supported 120 startups. Some of them actually have raised $100 million, right? So जहाँ पे gap होता है, entrepreneurs are there. A little bit more push from the government would always is welcome. And that was the idea of this presentation, that actually what we feel should be done or could be supported. Definitely all cannot be done, but this was perspective that what is a possibility. So for example, sir, the scientific evaluation of claims of efficacy, right? Now I go and grow ashwagandha and make tablets, and somebody tells me that actually there is a proof that actually there is efficacy. Chinese people peer-to-peer review, sending it to universities. They do all this thing, and you'll have a huge amount of text available with scientific based evidence. In India now, that is actually we believe कि ये काम करता है. Now that thing can be done by the government, because they are having institutions, they are having capable people, they are having universities which can do all these type of things, or make a policy or that if you do this, this is what incentive is. Otherwise, even the researchers are not going to be interested. मैं अश्वगंधा के बारे में जाके पढ़ के क्यों लिखूं यार? कुछ there is no incentive, nobody knows about it. I'll write about Garcinia. Right, Garcinia is international flavor of the day, right? So I'll write about it or research about it. So those small intervention we are talking about, and again, financing for export-oriented units, especially for export credit for working capital, is a big challenge in any of the perishable or those things which are risky. And I think that needs to be thought about.
फाइनेंस कमीशन ने भी ये काफी बड़ा इलॉबरेट स्टडी लिया था just to increasing the exports of the food side and all that processed food and limited areas में क्योंकि ये बड़ा canvas बहुत wide है as the kind of presentation तो बहुत ही focused हो जिसकी की already government programs के साथ synergy हो वहाँ पे कुछ अगर gaps आपको नजर आते major gaps and I think that's the area to work around.
Sure.
This is to get a bigger picture, then you have to have some focused.
Yeah. And so these are some little bit of transformational shoots which we talk about what's happening globally, right? So one thing is the changing in the shape of demand. So alternative proteins. The idea is that actually the government should be aware about these things would have a very decent impact on whatever we are doing today. So this is, for example, alternative protein. We'll have to start thinking about it, can we tap it? Some of the startups are already doing it. In fact, one of the startups, they were part of now the Technology Panel World Economic Forum, this cohort, who are actually working in alternative protein. Then food sensing technology for food safety, quality, and traceability. Now this is going to become norm. No Walmart is going to buy anything from your farmers until unless there is a basic level of traceability. Now, are we prepared about it? Are our farmers prepared about it? If not, then maybe not challenges not today, but 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, we'll end up with those challenges. Then nutrigenetics for personalized nutrition. So this is also area which you see that a lot of activities happening. Then promoting value chain linkages. So the mobile-based service delivery. This can increase farmer income by 3 to 6% and reduce the food loss by 2 to 5%. Big data and advanced analytics for insurance. Now, risk mitigation is one of the big challenges of the farmers. I think this is also one area where some of the schemes, when they are very, I'll say that complex, are not very helpful. We are seeing parametric insurance being talked about across the globe, where in case this happens, farmer gets money. Right? They have to not go through long process of claim processing and all that. Barish nahi hua, we all know because of we have technology, right? He should be paid, right? So those type of things you are seeing. Then IoT for real-time supply chain transparency and traceability. Blockchain enabled traceability. Blockchain is going to disrupt agriculture and food market like anything. And here everybody has a play, and especially the regulators have a very strong play. Again, the policy need to be made about how do we want.
So this has been piloted. Department of Commerce actually has done some effort on some crops. Actually, for some crops they have developed blockchain system for exports, particularly during the pandemic.
Right. Then the creating effective production systems, so precision agriculture for input and water use optimization. Again, this is the area you'll find a lot of traction happening. Microbiome technologies to enhance crop resilience, off-grid renewable energy generation and storage for access to electricity, gene editing for multi-trait seed improvement, biological-based crop protection, and micronutrient for soil management. So these are typically, I say that green shoots, which is you'll see that across the world, which are validated, proven cases of they either reducing the greenhouse gases, making things more efficient, effective, better price points. Now, little bit about us. So, like we started 2000, 22 years back. Idea was to act as a bridge between those who are having information on agriculture and those who don't. And currently, we are recognized as unbiased source of market intelligence by commodity buyers, traders, agro input companies, policymakers, development agencies, government startups, and tech platforms. So I won't go into service offering much. So we are present pan India. We work with a lot of institutions and organizations, in the government sector, private sector. This is a little bit of more details. We work with central state governments, multilateral agencies, corporates, insurance companies, tech platforms, and startups. Uh, this is, I'll say that something which is would be interesting. We have it was part of ensuring that onion price is stabilized. We were 2012 and 15 advising on the wheat export, right? And Saroja ma'am was the part of that and ensure government made far more money from exporting wheat than actually they were scheduled to make. By providing them the strategy and working very closely with the empowerment committee on wheat export. Then we were among the first few who worked on e-auctions, right, in Maharashtra, to advise the APMC Mandi how to set it up. Other than that, we have done a lot of activities. We work with the Department of Consumer Affairs, Ministry of Agriculture and Finance, RBI, State Bank of India, from inflation numbers to policy intervention. We work with a lot of government organization currently. And we are having within our leadership team 200 man years of experience in this industry. So Bhaskar again is close to 20 years. Saroja ma'am 30 years of experience. I'm also dabbled in doing a lot of things around agriculture. Very strong operational research and digital initiative team. Now, as I was saying, Indigram. So ISAP Lab Indigrams and Benzite 10 are another. We won't say we are a group, but we are actually loosely connected with the common leadership and founding teams. ISAP is a not-for-profit organization working with 500,000 farmers on an annual basis. We have created a lot of FPOs, right, 250 of them, self-help groups, and micro-entrepreneurs. Lab Indigram is one of the most respected name when it comes to incubation in agri domain. In fact, we were awarded very recently as the emerging technology incubator by the Department of Science and Technology, just on the National Science Day, Technology Day, sorry, National Technology Day, just a couple of days back. Benzite 10, actually, we thought once you graduate from an incubator, you need funds. So we have floated, I'm also part of the team as a co-founder, a SEBI registered category 2 AIF, where we actually the next scale from incubated to SIDBI. We might raise from them also, but we have raised funds from the private LPs currently. And with that, I would like to thank you for patient hearing. I know it's a little bit long, but the topic itself was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you for the.
Because you have to go for 12:45, so perfectly at 12:40 I finished.
Thank you for the great presentation. So, is there any further?
I was just thinking, what's the broad convention to bring about these agri exports?
So first thing is that, sir, we need to understand the data from the ground. Currently, we are having very patchy information is exactly what is the demand, what is supply. Unless we have that metrics taken care of. In fact, I would advise you some of the data which has been published by some of the departments, I don't want to name it, just see those data, right? You also will find that actually this data is not even worth what paper it is being written on. And based on that, you want to take business decisions. Like if I have to take a business decision whether I should be buying this to export, I cannot do that because that data is that's why people come to companies like us. And this is where I believe first thing is that we need to have a very strong focus on collection of the right sort of data with the right periodicity. And then you will be able to, I'd say that do 80% of what any entrepreneur needs is that availability of that data. As a startup, as an entrepreneur, as someone who is running even a MSME or a big company, my challenge is that some data is only the preview of the government. Today we happen to be the largest private sector database in India on agriculture. 20 years of historical information for so many commodities. But when it comes to government, people want, I rely on government because they have published it. And this is where I believe like government has to bring more data on the table, and especially on the demand, supply, what's happening, what's going. Estimates which are coming also have to be timely, because by the time the estimate comes, like the market has already reacted right on its own whims and fancies. So these are things which restrict the export market. So collection of data and the policy around it, and ensure that the data is updated regularly. I believe that if government does that, the rest of the recommendation are okay. Like that can be taken care by the private sector.
So basically, I think previously uh, uh, the farmers or the agricultural sector was not that data intensive, in the sense they were not looking at data so closely for decision making. But now, if you want to go forward with all these plans, then strategies, and if you want to promote that at a industry level, at a farmer level, then we need good information systems.
100%.
And that information systems did not actually be centralized, but given the way technologies are evolving now, they can be collected at the points, at the actual places, and using all these different technologies.
100%.
So there can be cooperation actually. The government itself doesn't have to do that, but a company like you're already doing all these data sets that can be used.
Now, I'll just give you an example, micro irrigation scheme. Such a beautiful scheme, right? We need it badly, right? From the climate aspect of it. If you just dovetail it with like, availability of the right information, right? Where all these are active, right? And the GPS location of that, where are the subsidies given? That makes so easy for any decision maker, whether in the public sector, private sector, that can this crop be grown there, right? We just get a number that like, this much irrigated area in this district or this taluka, right? Now, talukas are huge. Same as when we talk about like, typically your the macronutrient in the soil, right? 80% of the sample from this state were having nitrogen deficiency. Now that's good for a news article, right? But for a practitioner, that information is hardly of that value. But now, if for example on a GIS map, I see where actually like what's at the granular level, what is like deficiency of nitrogen or a phosphorus or any micronutrient, I can say no, you cannot grow this crop there at all, right? Don't even think about it. Let me find somewhere else to aggregate this product. So all these small things, I believe, like and for any private company, even if it's like the Walmarts and the Amazon of the world, for them to go on the ground and collect that information, paying $16 per farmer or per farmland, like it's not valuable for them to spend that money. The government has to intervene in these areas, and there is a great scheme, for example, like soil health card scheme, but digitize it to the level where actually granularly people are able to see it and find out where what can be done. So I'm saying that there are just small gaps which needs to be filled. We are having very strong, as like I was talking to Mr. Chirag Vaishnav, like he's yeah. So Chintan Vaishnav. So he's saying that actually Deepak, we India, we are having beautiful parts. We lack system, right? So this is what I also strongly believe. Like we are having all good parts there. We need to have a system which might put all these parts, and then we have a beautiful symphony, like which is music to our ears.
So thank you again.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Same as- So thanks everyone for patient hearing. I hope it made sense to you.
Thank you so much for running the session. We can end this.